I want to invite our friend Andrew Zimmern back to the stage, and he's going to lead a panel that looks at how the private sector, investors, and the funding and donor communities can unlock capital and capitalize change. So, Andrew, I'm going to have you come sit here, but I need you to see this clock. And I need you to follow this clock, okay?
I promise to follow the clock.
And I want to invite, I want to introduce the panelists that will be joining Andrew, starting with Rania Dagash-Kamara, the Assistant Executive Director for Partnerships and Innovation for the UN World Food Program. I'm going to move. Katie Lee, the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Farm Journal Foundation. Give them all a round of applause as we go. Sorry, I'm flustered. And Roy Steiner, the Senior Vice President for the Food Initiative of the Rockefeller Foundation. Give it up for Roy. Andrew, it's your stage. 26 minutes.
Thank you very much. It's easier when I'm asking questions and not talking. I hope everybody is enjoying everything that we've been talking about. This panel is going to continue to blow your minds because it's one of my favorite topics. Everyone has touched on it this morning already, and that is the role of private sector investment and the funding and donor community as a catalyst for change. And I would underscore, since that's what I talked about, one of the catalysts for change. So, Ronnie, I'll start with you. The WFP is one of the largest food security organizations on the ground. Climate resilience, obviously, a key pillar of your mission. How has the climate crisis changed the way the WFP works with local communities in light of the role of the private sector?
Oh, wow. Well, I should start by saying good morning and thank you to all of you for being here. And thank you also to our hosts and Andrew. You know what WFP does really well, in my biased opinion? We're 23,000 people across the world, and we're mostly in fragile conflict states responding to food needs, right? As Baron so eloquently said. But for the first time, we are seeing the first generation of serious climate change impacts on our operations. For 12 months straight, we've breached the 1.5 degrees, so we are seeing more floods, more cyclones, more droughts, and recurring with very tight intervals. I come from a drought-prone region, and it used to be a story of every 10, 15 years there's a drought. Now it's a story of every other year there's a drought. There's no recovery in between. And the implications are significant, but that has meant for the World Food Program that in addition to giving life-saving assistance, giving out food and giving out cash to save people's lives, we have had to buttress that with actually investing in smallholder farmers, in women smallholder farmers, investing in building social protection systems, investing in school meals. So to the envoy's last point, what's short term, what's medium term, and what's long term? School meals. You can't learn if you're hungry. And we do and have expanded school meals massively to over 100 million children because that holds communities together. A lot to say about that, but where the private sector comes in, Andrew, is the needs have doubled since COVID. 300 million people are hungry today, and we can't do it alone as WFP. So we need the public sector, who has been steadfast for decades, but the private sector comes in with voice, with agency, with money, and with technology and technical expertise. So all are critical, and any contribution in that space helps build and buttress communities' resilience so that they are more food secure. Over.
I just want to underscore that and ask you a yes-no question.
No.
Because the need has increased so much over the last 20 years, and your example of the Darfur region, and in that there's no recovery now that it's year after year, it takes a team effort. It's no longer just the WFP. It's no longer just the U.S. government. It is public-private partnerships and gathering as many team members as possible because the emergency is so great, the urgency is so great.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I just want. I mean, it's the time is now.
And it's also more intense, Andrew, right? I mean, we've been in the business of humanitarian assistance for 6 decades. It is not enough. And now we have to shift to building communities, being able to stand on their own feet and buttress, because we know the shocks are coming. But they need predictive analysis, as you said, Baron, that Google and Microsoft are helping with. We need the technical assistance, all of that come in, and everyone here on this panel, and we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Over.
Katie, a couple of issues. I mean, your expertise is the farm, right, and working with farmers. They have, over the last couple of years, along with a bunch of other people, I have been saying we have to put the farmer into the conversation. And just this year, at the very first breakfast I attended at the Clinton Global Initiative, someone in the room says the farmer has to be at the center of every conversation. Can you speak to that transition and the importance of including the farmer as a valuable partner in this ecosystem?
Well, sure. Somebody already stole my tagline, I guess, putting the farmer at the center. But just first,
it was Jose Andres, and I just want to out him right away.
I'll allow him to have that tagline. Being from Washington, living in Washington, D.C., big fan of his. So just first, let me say thank you to Food Tank and World Food Program USA for having me here. And you're absolutely right. The farmer needs to be at the center of these conversations. And I think when we talk about the private sector, we don't always think of farmers as the private sector. And they are the private sector. And they are people who are feeding the world. They're feeding their families. They're feeding all of us. And if we don't think of them both as farmers who are feeding people, but also business people who need to stay in business to be able to feed us all and nourish us all, that's a big mistake. And I think there's so many more people now who are really thinking about farmers in that way, and even just coming to the climate COPs in the last few years and seeing agriculture rise on the agenda, more and more farmers participating, including farmers that we get to work with here in the United States. And so I think that's just a point that I would completely underscore in this conversation, and just put forward that farmers really are, again, at the center of these discussions, and solutions that allow us to make progress as we adapt and mitigate climate shocks and stresses. We need to make sure that those solutions also work for farmers to stay in business and to be able to continue to feed us all.
We heard in earlier conversations, especially the one that Danny had just a few moments ago, about soil degradation, about loss of crops, about a downturn in Africa in production. And as I was hearing that, I kept thinking to myself, we're kind of a step away from that too. Everybody's image in their head is that American farmers are ultra resilient. We got this. There's tons of food in the supermarket. Just look at those gorgeous apples, that everything is A-okay in the American farm system. Can you take a minute and speak to that? Because that's not really the case, is it?
No, there's a lot of conversation in the United States around challenges that farmers are facing. Climate change is one, and I think we've seen that narrative shift where we can all really acknowledge climate change is happening. And I think you've seen in the United States a real shift in the agriculture community being on the front lines of really making that case and understanding it. Farmers are experiencing it all over the world on a daily basis. There were a number of farm groups and associations in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago. We had farmers that we work with in D.C. Last week. That was last week, right? And everyone, we're talking about, we need a farm bill. We need that policy support to enable the private sector to really be able to do its thing, farmers to do their thing in the United States. And so that enabling environment right now with the farm bill We already have an extension. We're hopeful maybe we'll get something done, but that's kind of that backbone of really supporting farmers in the United States. And certainly if we think about farmers in the US struggling and facing risk and all of these other challenges, whether it's from climate change or so many other things happening in the world, if you think about a smallholder farmer in a lower income country, in a conflict crisis situation, that risk conversation is life or death, right? We're talking about a very different scenario here. So I would just say, you know, farmers in the U.S., it's a real, there are lots of challenges that they're facing, but also we need to think about the context that other farmers are operating in as well.
And the country context that you put up is really important because we keep seeing apples. I just love saying the word, you know, apples just seems to be the symbol of America to me. I live in Minnesota.
Well, I'm from Florida.
Oh, that's right. That's a good point.
Oranges for me.
Oranges.
Sure.
But regardless of what it is, that's why we just keep seeing prices rising for everything. In other words, the grocery vegetable section is still full. It's just that now most of what's there is out of the realm of the average American to purchase enough to match the nutritional standards that we know that we should be abiding by, right? So it just becomes more expensive here. We still see them, they just become more expensive.
Nutrition. Nutrition,
which is a great segue, to Roy, who obviously works for the Rockefeller Foundation and was introduced before by Danny. But you sent me a note last night that I absolutely love because it's a passion project of mine, and I talked about it earlier with her, and that was, you know, you wanted very much to talk about the power of system solutions and the ability of school meals to deliver multi-dimensional benefits. And it was that one sentence, and I wanted, it was like in my head, it was ... assuming we get it right. Mm-hmm. So how do we get that right? Because that is an important nexus for us schools. You can't learn when you're hungry, but there's more to a school meal than just the hunger, and it is an important starting point for feeding hungry children.
Absolutely, Andrew. Well, let me first welcome you to the Big Apple, our New
Thank
York,
you.
which is our home. And by the way, I need to apologize for the traffic because in the 1940s, when they were situating where the United Nations was going to be placed, the proposal was actually Connecticut. And the Rockefeller family swooped in the last day and gave all the land where the United Nations is built. So
San Francisco.
blame the traffic on us. It's okay.
It was going to be San Francisco.
There were multiple sites, but
We were gonna be very
we almost
zen.
lost it,
Yes.
and you would have had it much better. Anyway, I think this one of the things that's really shifted in the conversation in the food space is food systems, and we can't do these individual things that don't connect up with each other. And it's one of the reasons why I've actually fallen in love with school meals, because it has so many different dimensions, but to get it right, you have to look at the full food